The signs of spring are easy to see. And the springs themselves are quite often close at hand, emerging where the oolitic limestone of the Cotswolds meets the underlying lias clay. Sometimes the spring is just a trickle of water, like this one at Idbury. But often the spring has become a well, a water source for us to use, and these are usually marked by simple tanks or cisterns. This well at Stow-on-the-Wold is one of a pair of wells which served as a water supply for local people. This is the other well, just a little further along the same lane. Neither well is particularly close to the town centre, suggesting that as Stow grew, its inhabitants became more sophisticated at piping the water to where it was needed. This one, though, has a dedication to St Edward, probably the Saxon king, and once had a cross and inscription to that effect. Because a reliable water supply is essential, where there are springs to provide that water, people often gather nearby, and a village comes into being. It was important that the well was dependable and the water was potable, so it's not surprising that many springs became holy wells, with a dedication to some saint or pagan god. Often these springs are marked not just by a utilitarian cistern, but by an impressive temple-like structure. This one at Spelsbury is particularly dramatic, though disappointingly no water now issues from the Lion's Mouth. Here's another example from the Victorian era, very definitely dedicated to a Christian tradition. It's in the village of Bisley, and is notable not only for its elaborate Gothic structure, but also because it's the site of a well-dressing ceremony in which the well is blessed and decorated with flowers. Such events are common in Derbyshire, but rare in the south. This is the well at Taston. It's been decorated with an impressive tower, and also sits in a pleasant garden made verdant by the abundance of water. Like most of the wells we visited, it's actually a spring, with water issuing unaided onto the surface, rather than a true well in which it has to be pumped or hoisted. By contrast, the springs at Severn Springs still look like springs coming out of a depression in the ground and running into the River Churn. Local people claim it as the source of the Thames, based on the idea that it finds its way into the Thames from further away than its rival claimant at Kemble. It doesn't seem usable as a water source these days, but has become something of a visitor attraction, giving its name to a large pub across the A436 road. Here's another spring that you might overlook if it wasn't for the name of the road it's in. In fact, Tibby is a corruption of Tabitha's, and the full name is St Tabitha's Well in the Gloucestershire village of Painswick. The water comes out of what is just a hole in the hillside, and then tumbles down the steep hill in a roadside gully. At Chedworth, the spring rises next to the churchyard, though it was probably there a long time before the church. This is the Cotswold Spring Water Company, using a spring to cash in on the fashion for exorbitantly priced natural products. If you start a brewery next to a spring, then you have a major ingredient to hand for making a much more useful product, beer. This microbrewery is so close to the Cotswold Spring plant that the water can be pumped directly into the brewery. Of course, there's a more famous brewery closer to home. Hook Norton Brewery sits right on top of a spring, so it just needs a pump to provide the water for the beer. Originally, the steam engine drove a pump. Now it's done by an electric motor, and the product's just as good.